It's an honor to have all you folks. I know we have a few World War II veterans sitting over here, and I've seen a few throughout the crowd, so I want to thank you all. Our World War II are our greatest generation, we call them, and they fought some of the toughest battles we have seen as Americans. I also know we have veterans that have served in Korea, Vietnam, and all the way up to the conflicts of Iraq and Afghanistan. So before I introduce the Master of Ceremonies, I have a few guests here that have a special token of appreciation for our guest of honor. So I want to hand these out, and then we'll start the ceremony. So, Zeke, come here, buddy. So, this year's guest of honor is my good friend Zeke Frazier from Kansas City. You can see his smiling face on the big screen. Zeke will talk more about his story, but I have two distinguished guests here from Senator Katie O'Connor-Hive's office and from State Rep Kalkos's office.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dennis Marcello. I represent State Senator Kathleen O'Connor-Hive. We have a citation, official citation for you. It's from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, from the State Senate's official citation. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Zeke Crozier in recognition of your courageous service and sacrifice to your country. And be it further known, the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to thereof, a copy transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate. Harriet Chandler is the President of the Senate. William Welsh is the Clerk of the Senate. State Senator Kathleen O'Connor-Hive presents this citation to you on July 31st, 2018, and we send you best wishes and thank you very much for your service.
Hello everyone, my name is Kelsey Crowley. I'm from Representative James Kalkos's office, and I apologize he can't be here today. Unfortunately, we're in our last day of formal session. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Zeke Crozier in recognition of your honorable service in the United States Army. Your dedication to our country and its military is commendable. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. Given this day, 31st of July, at the State House, Boston, Massachusetts, by the Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, and State Representative James Kalkos.
Thank you both. And thank you, Zeke. Now I want to call up the Master of Ceremonies. He's a real good man. It's a pleasure to have him here today, as well as Zeke. I want to introduce, as he makes his way through the crowd, Brigadier General Paul G. Smith. Thank you, General.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here, and at the risk of repeating myself, I've always loved Newburyport, because when I was the commander of the Massachusetts Army National Guard, the only time I ever got to come up here, though, was when there was a whole lot of snow coming down, a whole lot of wind blowing, and some house on Plum Island that was about to go underwater. So coming out here when it's sunny and nice and pleasant is a real delight for me. So it's wonderful, and I thank Donnie for inviting me to come here this afternoon. You know what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I'd like to start off this afternoon with just a couple of things. First of all, can I ask every veteran in the room to please stand? And if you can't stand, please give us a salute. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a round of applause for our true guests of honor today, our veterans. Thank you all for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you for what you've done for our nation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize all of the, it seems like hundreds of volunteers who are here to help out today. So if we can give a round of applause to all of our volunteers, that would be awesome. We're honored today to, for our opening ceremonies, to have a color guard from our local Coast Guard station. So without further ado, I'd ask that everyone please rise for the presentation of the colors. Colors, post! Fall out. Now for our national anthem, Marianne Talley from the Tom Newtley Band. Please remain standing.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous flight, all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Marianne. That was beautiful. Thank you. And if you'd please remain standing for just a little bit longer, I'd like to invite up Major Todd Hughes from the Salvation Army to give our invocation. Major, I will embarrass you once again. I've been in a lot of places where a lot of people needed things, like Hurricane Katrina, after the Boston Marathon bombings. Salvation Army was always there. As far as I'm concerned, they are the good guys. Major?
Thank you. And it is a privilege to be here to honor all of our veterans and staff. I thank you for that. Please join me in the word of prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we give thanks today for every man and woman here who has served, who has sacrificed, who have given of themselves for this nation and for the men and women who make up this nation, who put themselves in harm's way. We thank you, Lord, for their sacrifice. We thank you, Lord, for their honor. And we thank you, Lord, for their service. We pray your blessings upon them this day and their families. We think of the sacrifices and the service that they made so this nation can continue to enjoy the freedoms and the way of life that we enjoy. And we thank you, Lord, for those who continue to serve this great nation. And we ask your blessings upon them. And Father, we pray that you always watch over them. And Lord, we pray again for your blessings upon their families and your blessings upon this great nation. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Please be seated. You know, you can't have a general to a meal without getting at least a few remarks. So, anyway, folks, good afternoon and welcome to our family celebration. I'm honored to be with you today. We all come from different places. We've worn different uniforms in different times, and we've served in different branches of the service. But one thing unites us here today. It brings us together as a family. We're all veterans, or we're all people who support veterans. Whether your service was long or short, hot or cold, domestic or overseas, we are veterans. Now, the government has all sorts of different definitions of what a veteran is. The state has one definition, the VA has another definition, but to me, there is only one definition, and it goes something like this. A veteran, whether they're active duty, retired, National Guard, or Reserve, is someone who, at one point in his or her life, wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including my life. That's honor. That's service. That's what it means to be a veteran. Just the other day, I read the results of a Gallup poll where they surveyed all sorts of Americans, thousands of them. And the question that the Gallup poll asked was, what groups in our society are worthy of your trust? Now, trust is a rare and valuable thing in this age in our country where we have some degree of disagreement and conflict. The answers to the poll might surprise you. People didn't seem to trust lawyers all that much, or judges for that matter, or business people, or even people like me who are now college professors. They didn't trust them. I hate to say it, they certainly didn't trust news reporters and politicians. That didn't work so well either. They had some trust for police officers and doctors. But the groups that they trusted the most were the military and nurses. Now, why is that? I think it's because we stand for more than ourselves. We stand for our nation, and we stand for the values that keep us strong. Old-fashioned ideas like loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and courage. And we all hold those values in our hearts, whether we're the newest recruit heading off to basic training or one of our honored World War II veterans who are here with us today. And that's what makes us a family, is those values. Before I go on, I want to take just a moment to recognize at least one of the folks who helped make this possible. Donnie Jarvis Post. You know, Donnie, when I was your brigade commander, you came a lot quicker than that. But anyway, you know, I want to take a minute to recognize with my personal coin, Donnie Jarvis. Donnie is a combat veteran of OIF, a distinguished veteran of the Massachusetts Army National Guard, a valiant member of our state SAVE team who's been responsible for saving veterans' lives. He gives his time in veteran court. He gives his time to the community. He gives his time 24/7 for veterans. And most importantly, he does what it takes. He does anything to make a difference in veterans' lives. So Donnie, I'd like to give you my coin. No, okay. Finally, for all veterans who've taken the time to be here today, I say thank you. Thank you for your service to our great nation. Thank you for the sacrifices you've made for the American people. And most importantly, thank you for the values that you keep in your heart, the values that make America great. May God always bless the United States of America. Thank you for having me. Let's eat.
I want to thank Fairway Mortgage for sponsoring the luncheon today. If Dan's still here, maybe he may have left. But Dan Ventura, who owns Fairway Mortgage, has been the sponsor of this event since day one. And his dad, Frank, started the luncheon over 10 years ago. So I really want to thank Frank for Dan for his continued support. Now, General, have you started eating yet? 1 second. So, you can sit down. I'm going to call the General real quick to introduce our speakers, and then after our two speakers, we're going to have the guest of honor speak. So, General, if I could borrow you for 2 minutes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have a number of folks who have served with distinction who are going to talk to us today. And our first speaker is Mr. Dominic Marcelino. Dominic is a former United States Marine Corps corporal who served with distinction in Vietnam outside Da Nang, where he served as a radio man. And you know, I think that's special, particularly today, because our Vietnam veterans have never received the recognition that I think they truly deserve. Dominic has founded and now serves as president of the Disabled and Limbless Veterans Incorporated in Boston, where he continues his service to our nation and to our fellow veterans. So without further ado, Mr. Dominic Marcelino.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dominic Marcelino. As the Admiral said, I'm a Marine Corps Vietnam veteran, recipient of a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, and I'm also a triple amputee. I was born and raised in Medford and went to Medford Vocational High School. When I graduated, I worked as an electrician and traveled around New England for an electrical job. The Vietnam War was looming, and rather than get drafted, I decided to become a Marine. I entered the Marine Corps on August 31, 1969. I was off to Paris Island as a recruit, graduated boot camp, private first class, and second place battalion high shooter. Not easy for a left-handed person who never shot a rifle before. Then I was off to Camp Lejeune for ITR, advanced training. I had a 30-day leave and then was sent to Camp Pendleton for Vietnam training. At that time, the war was being put on hold, so it was hurry up and wait. After 30 days of mess duty, the decision was made to continue the war. And we got on a commercial flight, a stretch 707. We landed in Alaska, had enough time to get out and have a cigarette, and then we boarded again to fly off to Vietnam. I don't know where you served or how you got there, but I remember getting off the jet, the beautiful Yellowbird stewardesses waved and said, "Bye-bye, men," as we disembarked. When they opened the door, we were greeted by that humid, cosmoline military smell, and I heard the words, "Welcome to Da Nang." It took all day for me to get to my destination at An Hoa Combat Base. I didn't go to Vietnam as a company or platoon or a squad. I went as an individual replacement Marine. When you go as a replacement, all of the guys in that unit have been there varied lengths of time. So they had the experience and the knowledge, and the quicker I absorbed their experience, the better I would be at my job. I hung out with the radio man and learned how to operate the radio. When he got dysentery and was medevac to the rear, I was his natural replacement. I became a radio man. I had memories of my father saying, "Don't volunteer for anything, keep your mouth shut." But there I was, and who does what his father says anyway? I went out on numerous operations. We were protecting a bridge and the surrounding area just to keep the enemy from attacking the bridge. We went out on patrol twice a day, early in the morning and late in the afternoon. It was that same routine every day. We would go out, the enemy would shoot at us, we would get down, We would return fire, and everything would quiet down. We would resume the patrol. One day, my lieutenant wanted to go out on patrol, and the captain said he had to take a reinforced platoon of about 22 Marines, including a machine gun squad, a booby trap dog, and its handler. This was no ordinary 9-man patrol. About 3/4 of the way into patrol, I called in my last radio checkpoint, and the next thing I know, there was a terrible explosion, and I was face up in a big hole in the dirt. The rest of the platoon returned fired, and I just wanted to take cover. When I tried to roll over and sit up, I realized my right arm and my right leg were gone. The next thing I remember was the corpsman sitting on my chest trying to keep me calm and applying tourniquets to my arm and my leg. He used my belt and his belt as tourniquets and gave me a syringe of morphine, and then there's that John Wayne moment when you want a cigarette. Unfortunately, the radio got the worst of the explosion because it was inoperable, but the corpsman wanted to keep me conscious. So he kept asking me to call in for a medevac. In the meantime, the lieutenant assembled a squad to go back to the bridge and call my medevac in, and I watched and waited, still conscious. Finally, a chopper arrived. They loaded me on a stretcher, and the lieutenant said goodbye. They closed the door and up about 2,000 feet, and I was freezing. It was off to Da Nang again. When we arrived, again, I was put on a stretcher, and I still remember the stark contrast going from the olive green, cosmoline smell, hot, humid countryside to the bright, white, cool, sterile hospital setting where everyone was dressed in white. A priest came, gave me last rites, and they hooked me up to an IV, and it was out goes the lights. When you get even the smallest cut in an environment like Vietnam, you get a huge infection. I had sustained such injuries that a massive infection had set in. In 4 or 5 days, when I was stable enough, I was flown to Yokosuka, Japan, at a naval base and hospital. I don't remember much of that time because I was disorientated, but eventually I was put on a hospital plane and flown to McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. From there, I was taken to Philadelphia Naval Hospital by ambulance. The ride down to Philly was as scary as anything I did in Vietnam. The corpsman was driving about 90 miles an hour and kept saying, "I've got to get you there." I begged him to slow down and told him I didn't die in Vietnam, and I sure didn't want to die on Route 95. When I arrived at Philadelphia, I was the new guy in the ward with about 80 guys. I was in the first bed, and the guy across from me was getting ready to get discharged. He had rehab for about 6 or 9 months, and he was getting ready to go home. So you could get a sense of what your life would be like over the next 6 or 8 months, and what I might be capable of achieving. But situations change, and after multiple operations, the surgical removal of my left foot due to gangrene was needed. I was ready to be fitted for prosthetics. The process was slow because of the volume of amputees that needed to be fitted. They just could not make legs fast enough. Life at the hospital was sometimes boring, more hurry up and wait. We had Gold Star mothers and local high school girls visit once a week to help us write letters and just to talk to. They would take us on occasional hockey game or football game. They're a great group of dedicated women who I still admire greatly. When we were physically fit, they sent us to a different ward in the hospital to wait for our prosthetics. Of course, we would act up every now and again. We always asked ourselves, what could they do to us? Shave our heads and send us back to Vietnam? I was late returning from leave once and found out the hard way. They put me on 30 days restriction, and I had to muster every 4 hours. Office hours was a tool they used to keep us in line. My physical therapist was a second lieutenant, and we were required to salute him, call him sir. But lucky me, I lost my right arm, so I didn't have to salute anyone, but I did call him sir. While at the hospital, I flew home many times on leave. At that time, in 1970, there was no ADA, and flying was an experience while in a wheelchair. Despite some of the hardships, it's always been great to be home. I take my hat off to my family, my friends, who were happy to see me, and they could look me in the eye and see beyond my disability, and I was still the same person I was when I left. About 9 months after staying in the hospital, my retirement papers came through. I received my limbs, I mustered out, and I returned home to Medford. When I got home, my dad, who was a veteran and also an elk, had friends who were veterans and elks. They formed a committee, they held a testimonial for me, and raised funds to help me purchase a piece of land to build an adaptive house. It was the summer of '72 when I was retired, 100% disabled, and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. Because of my disability, it was impossible to return to my electrician's job, You just can't make a splice with one hand. But I did manage to find a number of jobs to keep me busy. I also traveled some, and at one point in 1974, a friend of mine who's in the Air Force Reserves got called up on active duty for 6 months and was headed to Thailand. Because I was retired military, I could fly space available for free on a military aircraft. I decided because I got cheated out of R&R, a trip to Thailand was owed to me. When I went home to tell my mother and father I was going to take a trip, they said, when I told them I was going to Thailand, they said, why don't you just go to Disney like everybody else? Then my mother said, if I didn't make it back for my brother's wedding, don't bother coming back at all. So I took off for Thailand anyway, knowing if I didn't get back for the wedding, I would be in big trouble. I spent the next 6 months in Thailand, and I made it home just in time for the wedding. I don't know where the next 40 years went. But I assembled and sold cars, had part ownership in an automobile salvage yard. Because I had time on my hands, I spent many hours assisting family members and friends with physical and medical needs and providing transportation to those who could not provide it for themselves. Fast forward to about 5 years ago when I was introduced to a gentleman called Mike McNulty, who had the desire to start a veterans organization. All throughout my journey, people have reached out to me to give me a hand, and this was my opportunity to give back. We formed Disabled and Living Veterans with a mission of providing meals, clothing, shelter, transportation to America's veterans in need and their families. We visit veterans in hospitals, provide support and encouragement. We collect new and used clothing to distribute to veterans in need. As a founding member and president of Disabled and Living Veterans, I've had the opportunity to help veterans by fulfilling our mission, which is veterans helping veterans. We also contribute financial support to organizations whose missions align with ours. We provide meals to veterans in VA's hospitals, clinic and shelters, and in transitional housing. We provide food and clothing to a veterans housing facility in southern New Hampshire, Veterans Inc. in Worcester, and also homeless veterans in Metro Boston area. We started our Suits for Success program, and we provide business attire to veterans participating in the Veterans Treatment Court programs in Norfolk, Middlesex, and Suffolk County. These men and women are trying to improve their lives with hopes of gaining employment and must adhere to a strict 18 to 24-month program. We've received donations from the Leahy Clinic, Sun Life Financial Company, the Derry Rotary Club, Salem Street Business Association in Medford, Eastern Bank, and a number of other companies and individuals. We also help Operation Troop Support, an organization that sends care packages to active duty servicemen and women stationed stateside and overseas. We recently partnered with Operation Adopt a Soldier. When a participant at the Veterans Treatment Court got flooded out of his family's apartment, he lost everything, one of the storms last winter. Within days, we supplied them with security, first and last month deposit on a new apartment, and in conjunction with Operation Adopt a Soldier, we supplied him with furniture, housewares, clothing, and bedding to help them restart their lives. We also raise awareness about our fellow veterans and their families who need assistance and support. We encourage high school students to solicit and collect donations of shoes, socks, and gloves for homeless veterans. We also collect handcrafted wheelchairs, shawls, and blankets from various church groups and bring them to West Roxbury VA Hospital. In my new role, I've been asked to speak to groups and give speeches. I've had to stretch my comfort zone as I'm normally reserved and I don't like talking about myself, as maybe you noticed. I've been master of ceremonies at the dedication of Honorable Park in Medford, at the mayor's inauguration on 2 occasions, and I was also asked to give a keynote speech to Medford Chamber of Commerce salute the Veterans Luncheon, much similar to what you folks do here. When I think about all the veterans who reached out to help me, I realize the importance of veterans helping veterans. I know everyone's military experience is a positive. I know not everyone's military experience is a positive one, but I have been fortunate to have strong support from my family and friends. Through my experience, I have learned the importance of providing support to other veterans who may not have been as lucky as I am. Of all the things I've done in my life, volunteerism has given me the greatest joy. When you hand a pair of clean socks to a homeless guy living outdoors, or provide a pulled pork sandwich to a veteran who's been in a VA hospital for the last 40 years, or go to Chelsea Soldiers Home with the Middlesex County Deputy Sheriff's Association, which I'm also a member, we put on an annual cookout for the residents and families. And there is no greater feeling than veterans helping veterans.
In closing, if you find yourself in need or your family needs some assistance or support, please reach out to us as we provide service to all veterans and families, regardless of when or where they serve. Again, I would like to thank you for your attendance this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominic, for speaking with us this afternoon and for all you do for our fellow veterans. Our next speaker is retired Technical Sergeant Gary Bent. And retired Technical Sergeant Bent is going to speak to us from a different perspective. Can I ask those of you who are in the audience who are parents of veterans or parents of service members to please stand? Parents serve in a very special way. Let us please give them a round of applause. Thank you for your service. And I too am the father of a soldier. So, Gary Bent currently serves as the Veteran Services Officer for the town of Middleton. He is a native of the town of Amesbury. He has a long distinguished service career in which he served as a U.S. Army infantryman. The only thing that makes me puzzled is he then went on to become an Air Force security police person. Why anybody would leave the United States Army infantry, I have no idea, but perhaps Gary will fill us in on that. But he continues his service, not only as a veteran service officer, but as the father of more than one, correct? Multiple soldiers who are currently deployed, currently defending us. So to give us a perspective on being a veteran and the parent of potential veterans, I'd like to introduce Technical Sergeant retired Gary Bent.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. As the general mentioned, we have children in the military. I have 3 sons on active duty right now. My son Jake is an airborne infantryman. My son Michael is a combat engineer, and my other son, my youngest, Andrew, is currently in basic training in Fort Leonard, Missouri. Right now, I'm hating life because it's about 110 degrees down there. So our son Jake deployed to Afghanistan as an airborne infantryman. September of last year, when he got overseas, he was assigned to a Special Forces unit. Their mission was to go out with Special Forces, provide local security while the Special Forces were doing their missions, as well as guard the perimeter on these little outposts where they were stationed. Being a father and a veteran and having served overseas in that part of the world, I knew what our sons were getting into when they enlisted. I knew what Jake was getting into when he enlisted in the infantry. But you never think it's going to be your kid that'll get hurt. I also want to say, as a father, I envied the other fathers of troops who never served because they didn't know what their boys were getting into. I did, and I supported my son. So April 11th of this year, I was actually visiting the VSO's office in North Andover with Joe Wank and Crystal Clooney, and Jake was out on a mission with Special Forces. So I got a phone call from an odd number from overseas, and for some reason I knew it was Jake, but I shouldn't have been hearing from Jake for another 2 weeks. We were notified that Jake was injured severely in a non-combat related incident out at one of these remote outposts. Jake had received burns, and we didn't know the extent of the burns. Initially we were told he was fine, and we told he wasn't fine, and then being a member of the Air Force and the Army, I had connections all over the world, so I immediately reached out to everyone I knew, found out who was deployed downrange, found a buddy of mine at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. He did some digging, and he texted my wife and I, and again, another bad part, he texted us and said, doesn't sound good, doesn't sound like he's gonna make it. Nothing a parent ever wants to hear about, especially as a father and a veteran with 3 boys serving. It's crushing, because you want to be there to help your kid. You want to be there fighting for your kid, so your kid doesn't have to be there. The next 6 days went like a blur. Jake was medevaced from the outpost to his forward operating base, down to Bagram, from Bagram to Germany, from Germany to Walter Reed, and then from Walter Reed to the Texas Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, the burn center. That was about 6 days of travel. Jake had a critical care team with him the entire way. Fortunately, again, we had friends all across the globe from my time in the service. We had people with Jake, checking on Jake, contacting us, updating us on Jake's status. So, that right there was just amazing. We were like, I saw Jake. He looks like a hell, but we saw him. He's breathing, he's alive. So that was good. At this point, my wife and I were trying to plan and figure out how we're going to get to him the quickest way. The Army does get the family to the soldier, but as we all know, there's paperwork, red tape. I don't have time for that, so I'm going. So me and Jen started making arrangements, first to go to Germany, then to go to Walter Reed, then go to Texas, or all 3, we were going to be wherever he was. Jen and I made the sad mistake of not having current passports. We let our passports expired. So if he wasn't going to make it, we were going to be in Germany. So we called the State Department, I called some contacts. Jen, my wife and I had brand new passports within, I think, under 40 minutes, which I think is the record. State Department bent over huge for us and helped us out. We didn't have to go to Germany. We didn't have to go to Walter Reed. We got to Texas a day before Jake arrived. The people in Texas were fantastic. The minute we stepped foot on Brooke Army Medical Center, the Army and the Department of Defense took care of us. We were put up in the Fisher House. We had our rental car paid for. We had food from the commissary given to us. We had nothing to worry about but taking care of our soldier. Their plan was to get us to see Jake the minute he arrived on the facility at the ambulance bay. That did not happen. There was a lot of confusion. They had a couple other casualties with Jake, not burns. Jake was only burned. We were moved upstairs to the burn ward. After a while, they said, "You can come see your boy," and they wanted us to see our son as soon as we could. For that, I can't say enough positive things about those people. They wanted us to get to our boy. Unfortunately, the first time we got to our boy, they just finished debriding him. They had to scrub him and scrape him from his plane ride to make sure he hadn't picked up any new particulates, contaminants, or anything that could cause infection. My son looks nothing like me. He's 200 pounds of muscle when he went overseas. The first time we saw him, when they got us to him, he was laying on the bed in pain, crying, writhing around, bleeding from his face, his arm, and both his legs. Being a combat soldier, I've also been an EMT. I've worked in the ER. I was a security force member. I've seen death and destruction and maimed bodies, but when you see your own child like that, it's a vision I try to erase every day, and it's not going to get away. We hugged our son. We kissed the top of his head. We got out of the room. But again, we were thankful they let us see our kid. He was fine. He wasn't fine, but he was breathing and he was alert. From then on, we stayed 6 weeks at the Fisher House in San Antonio, Texas, with Jake while he's in the burn unit. My wife's a school teacher, my daughter is a student. They flew back and forth every weekend. The Army paid for those trips, some of the local charities paid for those trips, and I'll mention those at the end. But the care and the compassion that our wounded soldiers' families get, it's unbelievable. There's literally nothing we couldn't have asked for or gotten. And the same with our soldiers. There was one morning down there at Brooke Army Medical Center. Right now, when we were there was 140 wounded and injured soldiers. We have troops in contact in conflicts around the world right now. We have troops in contact in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. When a soldier dies, it's on the news. When a soldier gets wounded, it doesn't make the news. Brooke Army Medical Center gets the majority of those wounded troops. One morning, I got to have breakfast with 140 wounded troops from recent conflicts. Young female soldiers, 20 years old, missing limbs. 30-year-old father of 2 infants, missing an arm. They were all there, but they're getting the best damn care this country can provide. It was just unbelievable. So with that being said, Jake is doing okay. He had first-degree burn to his face, he had second-degree burn to his right arm and both legs. The burn doctors in San Antonio, that's all they do is burns. Even the burns from around the globe get sent to them. They were amazed of how well and how fast Jake had healed. He has permanent scars, but it's not disfiguring. It's noticeable, but it could be a lot worse. But physically, he's fine. He was home on leave with us, just left Friday. Our other son, Michael, is just home. We have a revolving door of soldiers now. But I wanted to share the main point of my rambling speech here was the teamwork, the military friends, and I want to give thanks. The teamwork of getting my son from the battlefield to Texas to getting him home to us on leave, it's unimaginable the amount of moving pieces that got that one soldier off that battlefield and back to the United States. My wife and I think in that 6 weeks in Texas, I've hugged more people in that 6 weeks than I have in 46 years of my life. I've given out more pictures of my son. I've shaken more hands, and every member of that team gave my son 150%, not even 110%. They wanted our kid to have the best possible outcome. And they also helped every single soldier down to get the best possible outcome. Part of the team I mentioned is we had friends from when Jake hit Bagram to when Jake got to Texas checking up on him. You don't find that in the civilian world. I had friends on different continents checking on my boy. That's awesome. Right before he joined with my other son, Michael, I had one of my former soldiers. Actually, he was my problem soldier. I'm sure every veteran had a problem soldier. This kid was my problem soldier. Haven't seen him in 20-something years. He shows up at my house in Amesbury to see my boys go off to the Army. Haven't seen him since, but again, the teamwork and the camaraderie is there. This past weekend, I had another friend I served with. Haven't seen him in 27 years. We served in the United Nations Command Security Force. Last time I saw him was December 10th, 1991, and he was at my house all weekend. Again, you don't find that in the civilian world. Only veterans and military know that kind of bond. And thanks. I want to give a lot of thanks out to a lot of people. First, I want to start with the North Andover VSO and his assistant, Jill LeBlanc and Crystal Clooney. Can you guys stand up? I'm going to embarrass them. So when I was notified of Jake being injured, I was in their office. And besides my wife and kids, I don't think there's any other group of people I'd want surrounding me when I find out my soldier son is injured as other veterans. Crystal's a Gold Star mom, Joe's a combat veteran. I couldn't even think straight when I was talking on the phone. I don't even remember half the conversation. And I just really wanted to punch holes through the wall. And Joe and Crystal were there for me. And, we talked for an hour and then I went home. But without them, I don't think I would have got home safely that day to my house. So thank you. The State Department I mentioned, we called the State Department. We kind of got a little bit of run around. We mentioned we had an injured soldier. People started moving very quickly for us. And we, like I said, we went to the Portsmouth passport office, bumped everybody, and we had brand new passports in under 40 minutes, which I think they did say was the record. So I know there's probably nobody here from the State Department, but they are fantastic when it comes to helping the families of soldiers. Brooke Army Medical Center and the Burn Center, especially the Burn Center, these people see the most horrific injuries war provides. Fire injuries and burns are horrific. Jake was doing physical therapy down there with a young Marine with 70% of his body burned. This kid was a mess. And the 6 weeks we were there, the military was fixing this kid and slowly putting him back together. The technology and the techniques they have down there for our soldiers is just amazing. Second, the Fisher House. We stayed at the Fisher House for 6 weeks. I don't know if you don't know what the Fisher House is, please look it up. It's an absolutely amazing organization. It provides free housing for wounded soldiers' families so they can be there while their soldier heals. It's proven soldiers heal quicker when they have a loved one with them. Years ago, before Fisher Houses, the soldier healed alone and was miserable, or the family went broke staying in the local hotel outside the base. So all major medical facilities now have Fisher Houses. We did not want for anything. We just focused on our son. While we were there for 6 weeks, we made lifelong friends of other families of wounded soldiers. We were all there for the same goal, to help our soldier, Marine, Airman, Sailor, Coast Guardsmen heal and get better. So a big shout out to the Fisher House Foundation. Another foundation or association that assisted us down there was the Warrior and Family Support Center. It's at Brooke Army Medical Center. It's across the street from the Fisher House. It's a completely donation-run facility on the base, but they run on just all donations. Every single day they provide a free and different kind of meal to all the wounded soldiers and their families. So the soldier doesn't have to eat in the chow hall. The soldier doesn't have to go through the hospital chow hall. He can eat a barbecue, Chinese food. It's all free and donated by this association. When Jen and Katie were flying back and forth, they were buying the plane tickets for Jen and Katie to fly back and forth every weekend. Again, all donations from great Americans and great organizations. Another organization here in Massachusetts, the Military Friends Foundation, they sponsor the Tough Rock Road March every year. Sarah Sweeney, I believe, her title is Executive Director. I personally have donated and helped with events that the Military Friends Foundation does, and their goal is to help soldiers and their families. So when she found out Jake was injured, she immediately reached out and offered the full resources of her foundation. And we didn't want to take it, but she's kind of like, Gary, this is what we do. We help the families. So she was fantastic. She helped get us resources and assets that helped us get through those 6 weeks where we didn't know what our family was going to be like. We didn't know what Jake's status was going to be, and again, it eased the burden. The only thing we had to focus on was our son. Tired of picking it up. So as I was talking about teamwork and camaraderie, all of us have served. We have friends. You could pick up with a friend you haven't seen in 30 years and be like you saw him yesterday. I've done that many occasions. It's probably one of the best feelings as a soldier. When Jake was lit on fire, it was a non-combat injury. It was an accident. But he was with Special Forces. He had 3 Special Forces members immediately start treating him. He said one Special Forces medic was getting an IV line into him, getting some fluids going, getting some pain medication. There was an Air Force pararescueman, another special operations guy. He's calling for a medevac to get my son off that damn outpost. And there was a 3rd special operations medic punching him and telling him jokes, trying to get his mind off the pain and what happened or what may be happening to him down the road. Once we found out there was those 3 individuals at Jake's outpost, because they're special operations, we couldn't get their name and rank. But we do, my family and I, we have contacts with the special operations community. I reached out to them and I said, you get a thank you out to that outpost, wherever the hell it may be. We don't even know where this outpost was where our son got hurt. I said, you get this out to them and you say thank you to them. And we got a response a day later from our family friend. He said, I got your message out to them. They said, thank you for thinking of them. And then about a week later, maybe 3 days later, I get an email. The email was, I had to redact it. It's from a highly decorated Special Forces commander on the ground in Afghanistan right now. He's in charge of all these Special Operations Forces in Afghanistan. So he sent us a letter, and I'd like to read that letter to you. The first half of the letter, he addressed it to our friend who got the thanks out to the battlefield. And it says, it is my experience that at times when guys are injured, wounded, or life events pull them back to the United States before the end of their tour with their unit, a sort of stress or PTSD can form. Especially more probably the tougher their mission and the closer to the enemy, right where PFC Bent, my son, served. Please support him during the transition home without his unit and with his injuries. And for his mental health, please convey to him on behalf of myself and the Special Operations Task Force Airborne, thank you for serving with the Special Operations Task Force. Thank you for serving your nation on the front lines against ISIS. For you are part of the 1% of Americans who serve in the rare minority on the front. Special is not defined by a beret or a tab. It is defined by doing the basics and at your best every day. Thanks for your service, speedy recovery, and we hope to serve with you again at the ends of the earth for Pax Americana. Sincerely, Special Operations Task Force Airborne Commander and Command Sergeant Major, so-and-so, Special Operations Task Force, Afghanistan. So this colonel reached out to us in Amesbury, Mass. to thank us for our son's contribution over there, and that's huge. I don't think you would find that in the civilian world. If a worker gets injured, if you hear from the boss, it's pretty impressive. But this letter, we had to redact it because of who he is and where he is, but this will go in my son's file and maybe even be framed someday. It'll be hidden somewhere. But getting this really helped us knowing that, our son got hurt, but he got hurt doing what he wanted to do with some of the finest warriors in this country, if not on the planet. So that was huge and helped us get over the process. We did bring this to Texas. We showed it to Jake. The first time I showed it to him, I read it to him when he was pretty high on narcotics, so he didn't remember it. So we read it to him about a month later, and he was kind of impressed that a highly decorated Special Operations Commander on the other side of the planet, knew of his injury and reached out to us. So, I guess with that being said, I do want to thank Donnie, wherever you are again. When my son was injured, I reached out to Donnie. I know Donnie knows everybody. He's got more connections than anybody I know with regards to veterans, and he offered the full support of himself and the SAVE team and all the other veteran organizations around the state and the area. Representative Jim Kelcourse, same thing. He reached out to us when he found out his son was injured. Huge supporter of veterans. He's not here, but I'd like to thank him. I guess that comes to the end of my speech. Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Gary and all the members of the Ben family. When we opened, I talked about this being a family gathering, and that's the point, that we are part of a large, connected family that stretches across our nation, and we take care of ourselves. But also, if you think about what Gary and his family have been through, they didn't get angry. They didn't turn away from the family. They didn't turn their back on our nation. They supported their son. They continue to support our family. And Gary today continues to support the veterans community by doing all that he can as a veteran services officer. So Gary, Ben family, thank you for your service to our country. If you'll turn your attention over here, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest of honor. If you want to see what a good-looking guy looks like in the Army service uniform, don't look here, look there. So our guest of honor today is retired Staff Sergeant, did I get it right? Retired Staff Sergeant Zeke Crozier, who served honorably in the United States Army, HUA, in Afghanistan.
Aviation doesn't say HUA, we say Roger that.
I'm old. I still say HUA.
Roger that.
Zeke returned from Afghanistan and continued to serve by forming a very interesting business called Handicapping, which continues to support veterans. So without further ado, a gentleman who's traveled a long way, Zeke Crozier.
Thank you. This is going to be weird holding this thing, but I'm going to pull it off. Before I talk and play this short video, I want to start backwards. That's what I do. That's how I do things. I want to thank Donnie. Where's he at? In my loud noises. What's up, man? Hey, I want to thank Donnie. He sets up everything. He's great. He's like a secretary for everybody. From being states away in Kansas, it's really difficult to plan things and not knowing. It's like the unknown. So you make it happen. I appreciate you. I want to thank Brigadier General Paul Smith. I didn't mention in person, but thank you for the introduction. Thanks for sharing your words. The two gentlemen that spoke and shared your personal stories. I know how difficult it is to speak to other people, and I can't imagine your personal, situations, things you've gone through. But I can't thank you enough for being brave and sharing those with us today. So, thank you. So now, this is a video that the news did when I was injured. So I'm gonna kill you with PowerPoint, I'm sorry. Being in the military, we all know that it's like death by PowerPoint, but that's how I have to do things. I've got a brain injury, I've got a horrible memory. Pictures help me remember things. And so the PowerPoint's it's just pictures. But this video is from the news when I was injured, and so...
Survival story even doctors can't fully explain.
A young Army flight engineer from Spring Hill, Kansas, went off to war and was involved in a violent Chinook helicopter crash in Afghanistan.
What happened after that crash took our investigative team all the way to Minneapolis for a recovery some are calling nothing short of miraculous.
Here's KCTV5's chief investigative reporter, Dana Wright.
By most most accounts, Army Sergeant Zeke Crozier shouldn't even be here. The sergeant with the 7 of the 158th Aviation Regiment, based out of Gardner, suffered a violent traumatic brain injury in a Chinook helicopter crash back in June. Doctors told his family if he woke up, if he survived, he might not be the same man they knew and loved before. Boy, were they wrong. Army Sergeant Zeke Crozier was well trained, ready for combat when he was called to duty in Afghanistan. At just 26 years old, the Spring Hill, Kansas native had already served his country as a flight engineer in missions which took him all over the world. Back on March 20th, he kissed the mother of his 2 young children goodbye and told his 2 boys Daddy was going to work and he'd see them in 12 months. Sergeant Zeke Crozier served in Afghanistan only 41 days. Immediately after this photo was taken, the Chinook chopper pictured here crashed. Zeke, a flight engineer, was sitting in the back. His head was thrown violently back and forth.
I had blood coming to my ears, I guess.
While Zeke remembers none of it, his wife Lacey will never forget it.
His commander saying, like, Zeke's having brain surgery, they've removed half his skull, he is unconscious and he's in a coma and he's not responding.
While Zeke left the United States like this, the helicopter crash left him like this.
So Zeke had suffered a severe traumatic brain injury. And, luckily for Zeke, that was his primary injury. And so he had very limited level of responsiveness when he was first injured and also when he came to us here.
Thank you, look at hero. Yet over the last few weeks here, something amazing happened to the soldier from Spring Hill, Kansas. A miracle, some say. While some warned Zeke might not talk again,
when he came out of the intubation, they asked his name and he said Zeke, and they were like, well, hi Zeke, and he said hello.
For those who worried Zeke might not walk again,
Zeke has been amazing to work with.
It took a few weeks, but he did that too. When we met up with Sergeant Zeke Crozier in Minneapolis, less than 3 months after the crash which had left him in a coma, Zeke wasn't just walking, he was running.
It's amazing to see, and it's really rewarding to be a part of that progress. 15 seconds.
For the last 3 months, this has been Zeke's routine. Every day, as a staff full of therapists help him find his way back.
I am so lucky to have gone from where I was to where I am now. I mean, it's a miracle how fast, that I've come. And that I've even come as far as I have.
We sat down with Zeke and his wife Lacey at their temporary home in Minneapolis, a place reserved for the families of injured soldiers. The couple knows so many people in Kansas City have been praying for them, and they believe it brought them to this point today.
Like, there's not enough thank yous for the prayers and the thoughts.
I don't even know them, and I hear that they've been there supporting me and praying for me. So that all that, I'm very proud of all of that.
Zeke says as he inches closer and closer to coming home to Kansas City, he is painfully aware other young soldiers with similar brain injuries will not make it home. He has been talking every day to the 20-year-old next door to him in the hospital. That soldier has not woken up.
I've taken it upon myself to, go next door and talk to him because I think that definitely does help, and if I can pass it on and try to help another guy, I don't know him, but I do know him because he is a soldier, and we're all in this together, so it's tough seeing him,
We've talked about your wife and your kids and your family, and you get emotional when we talk about the other soldier. KCTV5 News at 10, Sergeant Zeke Crozier comes home.
Daddy can walk, but still needs help getting better.
Our team was there for the emotional goodbye in Minneapolis.
supposed to cut off before that. Sorry. It's still like brand new. All right, death by PowerPoint. Here we go. For those of you that were waiting to hear me talk, this isn't like a structured speech. I don't have like a piece of paper. I have my speech written out in case I forget things, but because I forget everything. So it's a surprise to me what I'm going to say as well. I've got no filter, so I apologize in advance for whatever I say that's not politically correct or appropriate. But I'm going to go through this, basically just my career. I was in for 9 years. I chose Chinooks because I went to follow my brother as a Marine, and they couldn't guarantee me a position. And so I went next door to the Army recruiter, and they said, I did the ASVAB, and they said, you do whatever you want. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, teach me. And so there was an aviation unit next to my house, and so I said, I'll just try that out for now. It was a reserve unit, and I thought that if I liked it, I would go active duty. I tried it out and realized that you had to, support active duty troops, so I was on orders most of the time. So I just stuck with that, and it loved my unit. So, next slide, please. Thank you. I switched slides on this because in the video it says I've got 2 kids. I've got 3. A tall boy who's almost my height now. He's 14. I've got 3 boys. I've got 2 with my wife and 1 from previous. So I just want to make that clear. I'm very proud of all my boys, and so the news portrays what they want to portray. It was easier for them. So, okay, we can go on to that one. Okay, the Chinook helicopter. If you don't know anything about the Chinook helicopter, it's badass. It's the best airframe out there. No disrespect to those of you that have Apaches or Blackhawks at all, but it's awesome. So that's what I did. I was a mechanic, 15 uniform for the first 4.5 years, and after that I became a crew chief. I progressed, and my final flight, the flight that I crashed on, was my sign-off for a flight engineer. Not sure that works, but I'll take it. Good. Thank you. So when I joined my unit, they said that they hadn't been deployed in years, and not that I cared at the time, but I was like, okay. So I went through, basic training through AIT. I got home 6 months after I got home. Pakistan had an earthquake, and so we went on the earthquake relief, and then directly into Afghanistan after that. So they had been deployed in years, and I was in 6 months and already deployed. But awesome experience in Pakistan, devastation everywhere. Go to the next slide. There was PBS followed us on this, and they did a documentary. You can find this online. It's on PBS. Obviously, it's in the library. A documentary on our unit. I'm in it 4 or 5 times, like a little kid. I'm so young, but it's pretty cool. So check that out if you want to. Go ahead next. These are just pictures of me wearing FOD while I'm working on an aircraft. Young and dumb, a lot of ridiculous things I did, but that's all right. But these are pictures, again, these are just things I see to remember what I went through, what I experienced. If I don't have them, it's not like I don't know my own story, it's my story, right? But I forget pieces of everything, and pictures help remind me of what I've experienced. So I'll have a picture before we leave here today, because I don't want to forget this. Not that I'll forget it, but I'll forget about it. And so that's an issue to me. Go ahead next. This is in Afghanistan. The left side is a sandstorm. Cool picture. There were 12 helicopters on the flight line. You can see one now because the sandstorm disappeared. And then I'm the guy in the middle running out to close up one that's on the pad. Cool things I got to experience. And then, of course, on the right, I got to qualify on German weapons, the shooting snare. Next. Africa in 2009, went to Uganda to, of course, a Chinook unit. We had to go fly so that people that have never seen a doctor before can be treated. So another cool experience. More crazy, dumb shit that I did. I touched a line on its head. Who does that? You wouldn't believe me if I said that, if I told you that a picture. So, but one of the most ignorant things I've ever done in my life. All right, time to get serious. In 2011, mobilized for my second combat deployment, and I like these pictures, and I have them because that's my youngest son who was just born, and The picture on the right was me coming back, running back over to tell my kids and my parents bye before we took off and went to Hood to mobilize and deploy. These pictures remind me of how I was like the last time. You know, I remember me being 100% normal and okay. So I have those to share. The next is fine. So everybody knows about the crash called Extortion 17. Most people do. It's well known nationwide. It's about a helicopter that was carrying members of SEAL Team 6. Very few people know that though on June 25th, 2011, there was another flight called Extortion 17, and that was the helicopter I was on. This picture was taken of us. We never took pictures. We don't know why we took pictures. The guy in the middle was the PIC. He was our FOB commander at Bob Shank, and he said, "Hey, you might get a camera." I pulled the camera out of my pocket, and we used that camera, which I later found when I was in the hospital at the VA hospital. They pulled it out of all my things came out, and my camera was in there, and I found these pictures later on, which was also after the other guys had already got killed. The guy on the far left is Brian Nichols. He was the pilot of both helicopters. My crash, he survived mine. Everybody survived mine, and then he died on this one, which that anniversary is coming up here in a week. So, like 30, 45 minutes after this picture, they estimated that is when we crashed and went down. Yeah, next picture, please. That was me. I didn't take that picture, obviously. I have to throw humor in a little bit because it's such an intimate event time, and I was the lucky guy. I mean, I was asleep basically. Everybody else around me was suffering, seeing the things that they did. No one died in our crash, and everyone should have died. If you go to the next picture, no one should have walked away from that. It's ugly to look at. I was the worst one injured. I was the one that was medevaced out. Well, myself and Kurt Peckendahl. He was a mentor of mine that helped me and trained me. I was on the ramp though. I was the acting flight engineer on this flight. The only person standing up, which is why I was taken out so bad. I've got my tail that I was wearing that connected me to the helicopter, and I got just thrown all over the place. So, and then my helmet was also retrieved back. I've got my helmet on display at home with a line straight through the side of it. It just makes it real for me because I don't remember experiencing. I remember I called out clearance of the trees. I called it RPG. I thought the RPG missed, and then the massive part of it missed anyway. I didn't know that there were ashes that come off of that. They can also, almost like a cigarette ash. Like there's little pieces that come off. I called out small arms from the 6 o'clock position, and those missed as well. I thought the guys that were on board. There were 38 members total, and all their statements said it sounded like it was just pop into. So I don't know, but I don't remember. Everything I know and whatever I talked about is things that have been told to me. So this is just, basically telling somebody else's stories. What it feels like. But right after that, the pilot went to full thrust, and there was nothing. He said it was pegged. We had no power on the number 2 engine. Obviously, we're too heavy. We just dropped straight down. It was like 150 feet. They didn't have tape measure. Just going off the trees, I guess is what they did. And then Chalk 2 saw it, and they came around. And initially, they had 4 heroes, and then it was down to 2 heroes, and they thought I was still dead. They put me on a stretcher and pulled me out. They had to splint my leg because they thought my leg was just dislocated, when really I instantly had a brain injury to the right side of my head, which operates the left side of your body. And so my entire left side, I'm left-hand dominant, was just a brain. All my motor skills were shot. So it's something I still deal with today, but that's where it started. Next. I was in a coma for, I guess, a little over 2 weeks. And then I was in a wheelchair, had to learn how to walk and talk and write, and my writing still sucks. My kids write better than me. All of that, I do all those things over again. But it made me the person I am today, So I don't regret anything. Obviously, if I could join the Army again, I would. I tried to stay in, they wouldn't let me. So, but it was a miracle. I mean, I'm blessed to be here. I'm not sure why I'm here, but I'm here for a reason. And hopefully it's this and to spread love. And I do want to talk about this book, The Final Mission of Extortion 1-7. This isn't me. This isn't about me. This is about the men, the heroes, the true heroes. Ed Derrick was a photographer who pulled up on this and said he wanted to do it, so he got all the extras. I'm just part of the story, and one of the chapters in here is actually my story, of my crash anyway. It's got a couple of pictures that are on there, are in there. I get nothing from this. All I'm doing is just honoring my brothers and the fallen. And so I met another SEAL earlier today. Where are you at, sir? Okay. I met him in the bathroom anyway, and he said he had this shirt. So that's an honor to meet another SEAL. There he is back there. Thank you. Anyway, this is why I talk. I don't like to talk. I don't like to talk about me. Life isn't about me. Those are heroes right there, and so that's why I talk. Next, please. That's my wife. We got married in the hospital. I got released for an hour to go get married. This is a tough topic right now. We're not doing very well whatsoever. Everybody has issues, right? And we have many. We've had many issues. But I can't take her out of this slide because she has been a good support system. She's like a Don Jarvis, you know? She's hard-headed and she's stubborn and she's beautiful, but she makes things happen and she's a good mother. So that will be to be continued. Next, please. This, so people when they see me, they don't know, I mean, I get judged every day in my life and questioned because I don't look like I have anything wrong with me. And I think God's given me a purpose and to be that example, to show and speak for others that can't speak for themselves. I think, you know, but this is real life stuff, okay? I push myself every day of my life. I had to fly up here. Flying is not my favorite thing to do whatsoever, but I make myself do things I don't want to do, hoping I can beat those things. This was in Colorado a couple years ago. Going over it's that gorge, the gondola gorge, whatever it is. Anyway, that's like way up in the air and it's straight down. And I was freaking out, I didn't want to do it. But I made myself because the kids wanted to do it. And I couldn't go without them. So I did it. And it's hard. And I show this because it's real life stuff, you know what I mean? A lot of my injuries, things I struggle with are hidden. And I have to tell people, you know, I have to like explain myself. People are like, no, you don't have to explain yourself. I do. Because if I don't explain it, it's going to be a question, it's going to be unknown. And I'm hoping I can send some kind of message to you know what, whatever your fear is, try to beat it. I mean, it's not just going to happen one day where you're going to wake up and go, okay, I'm better. You have to fight. I take zero medication for anything. I was on 33 different meds from the VA. I was about 210, and this body should not be anything over 175. I blew up. I went from being dead on the hospital bed to taking a ton of meds and being many things happened while I was drugged that I couldn't change. I couldn't stop it. It's nothing. So I said, piss on that. I went back to the VA and she said she wanted to double my depression medication. I said, I'm out. I'm done. I didn't even come off like the steps still. I just full turkey. I quit everything. Threw all the medication away. I haven't touched anything since. I don't even take pain medication. And my leg is throbbing right now. I ripped it open from softball over the weekend. So, but I refuse it. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that's for me. And I encourage, if you are on a lot of medications or something like that, try to find an alternative route, I would say, because that's just my opinion for me. I can't speak for anybody else. But I show this because the struggle is real. Real. Next, please. Thank you. All right, so I was at church a few months ago, and there was a guest speaker talking. And so I have things that I always want to say. and I never know how to say them. If I sit down and just start like writing things down, I don't write, I just type it because I don't write very well. But so when I sit down and start putting my ideas on a piece of paper, I can think of them. And then when I say the dumb stuff, I can erase it, you know? So whenever I say, whatever I have to say up here right now, it's coming out, I can't edit anything I'm gonna say. So I write things down, and when he talked about this, it made perfect sense to me. And I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. It's a quote. He said, "Never let the best you've ever done be your standard for the rest of your life." So I think whatever greatest thing I've done in my life, that can't be my standard. I always want to do better. I want to do bigger and better things. And so, during looking for my purpose, this came out of nowhere. I didn't expect this. I didn't have this passion. I didn't know what this was. I just knew that people were throwing bottle caps on the ground, and I was pissed off because I'm like, can you pick them up? So I had that's an old wire spool made into a table, and I had them all put all their bottle caps on this table. And then I had this great idea of my motor skills stuck. I would get a gallon of milk out of the fridge, and I would go like this because I couldn't control it. And so that's where it started. I was mad. And so I took a hammer and smashed the bottle cap and went to go hit it. I missed. So I have this mindset. I'm extremely mentally tough and probably stubborn too, but it made me extremely angry that I tried to hit a bottle cap and I missed. So I ended up making myself smash every one of those bottle caps to force myself to hit the same spot to try to get better. I don't know why I thought of it. I just knew that I was mad and I was going to figure it out. So I nailed all those bottle caps to the table, and I was like, and I even drilled out some cup holders. The coolest thing I thought I had ever seen. I left, went home, came back next weekend. It rained, and all those were rusted, and so that thing went back to the trash can. And so that's where handicapping kind of bloomed, because I thought, again, how can I make something that won't be trash? How can I preserve it and make it last? So good, thank you. And then, why would I think of something of like the name handicap? And I was parked in a handicapped spot. I still have one of those. Yeah, that's me. It's a pride thing, but you know what? I have to embrace it. It's my life. And that's why people look at me and judge me, and they're like, "What's wrong with you? You look fine." Because when it's really cold, I can't walk. So, but I was looking at my placard in my window, sitting there trying to figure out what am I going to call this, because people started wanting to buy my art. I'm going, I saw handicap sitting there, and I go, handicapping, holy crap, that's awesome. And then someone said something to me, and I said, I'd cap that. I go, all right, here we go. So I've got some crosshairs, zooming in on a bottle cap. It all came together, and I'm a believer that everything happens for a reason. And so I believe that, you know, God put me in this position and gave me this, and He just gave me a trail to follow. And however I get there, that's where I'm going to go. So, next. So, one of the first ones I made once I got kind of good is Extortion 17. I've got 2 pieces that I haven't sold. This is one of them. I honor the fallen. I'll never forget, and I'll speak about them, and I'll share their legacy for the rest of my life. It's difficult to live in that shadow. It's tough to not be known, I guess. I don't want attention. I don't want recognition. I appreciate all that's happened while I've been here. The support, the love. I love that. I enjoy it. But bring it down. It's too much. I don't know how to take it. I don't know. It's a lot. And so glory goes to God. That's all I know. But this picture, and then I believe the next one. Nope, not that one. That's all right. But I've got 2 pieces that are mine. But that's all right. No, you're all right. We'll go here. So about a year ago, I met an incredible man, Arlie Ermey. They did a military makeover on my home. I didn't want that either. They asked me, they said, we're going to do this makeover in your home. And I said, I'm blessed to have a home. My kids are good. And so I said, can you go find some homeless veterans, and you can help many homeless veterans rather than just help me who's already doing okay. And they said, well, it's funny you say that because the guy that referred you builds tiny homes for homeless veterans, and he's the one that put your name in. And so it was a little easier to swallow, but I thought that was pretty amazing that he did that. How much time do I have? I saw you look at your watch and going, oh, she's cut me off. They start playing the music in the background. No, I had to cut a lot off of this too because I didn't want to spend like 2 hours on it. I don't like talking about me, I promise. It's not for me. But anyway, that man was incredible. He passed away a couple years ago, but before he did, or a couple months ago, before he did, he said, Zeke, he's like, make me a USMC emblem. I said, all right. And he didn't want to know, he didn't want any progress pictures, he wanted nothing. He said, I know you'll do it right. And so I put a couple of his coins in there, and he said, I called him up on his phone, which is incredible right there to have the Gunny's phone number. And he said, I said, Gunny, I can't mail this, man. I did not talk to him like that, but I said, he said, Zeke, bring it on out here. He said, take a few days, take a trip, and he said, come on out here. So I went out to his house and stayed at his house for 3 or 4 days. Amazing experience. I've connected with his daughter, his son. His daughter's an artist. His son's a photographer. He's got a couple more daughters, and then his wife, Mrs. Gunny. Blessed beyond belief to have that kind of connection right there and support. And now that picture is displayed in his brewery, Bravery Brewing Company in California. Incredible. It's amazing. Next. So this one. This is cool. I love this piece. I didn't know how I was going to make this happen, but this is something that Donnie called me up and said, Zeke, can you do this? I go, I don't know how I'm going to do that, man. But I got to come down here a few months ago and deliver that to Tracy. This is Tracy's piece. Thank you for bringing it back in to have on display. I'm not a photographer, so pictures don't do justice. And so to see that and then to see it in real life, I wish I had a front, like a storefront. I could display things and so people could see them. I don't care about money. I don't, obviously to pay for the material, things like that, but if someone wants my art, I think I'm honored that someone wants my art, and I appreciate it. And so this was a therapy for me. That's how it started out, and I'll never forget that. I can't let it change to work. I can't let that greed take over as well. And so I just enjoy that people enjoy my art. Next, please. So here's piece number 2. That is still mine. I've got a very high price tag on that because if somebody's willing to pay the money to buy that, I'll make another one. I went to Arlington Cemetery a couple years ago to finally see where my guys were laid to rest. I got home and I said, I had this vision in my head and I said, I've got to get it down on paper. And so the flag represents freedom doesn't come without a price. I mean, there's someone who's paid a price for that at some point. And so I'm blessed and I'm lucky enough that I could put that down the way that I did because it means the world. You know, I couldn't just tell someone that this is what I saw. Now I have something to look at. Again, I made my own pictures, my own photograph that I can look at next week. Yeah, these are just pictures of things. That's my youngest boy, Gunner. Named him Gunner because I was a door runner. It's cool. But I just you can scroll through the picture, whatever, and many other. And so there's just a display of different things I can do. I feel like I can do anything. It's a gift that's been given to me. You know, anything that I do at all isn't my credit. It's been the credit of the gifts that have been given to me and handed down. So I've got so much to say, and I don't even know how to say it. I do want to talk about this real quick. This is my opinion, all right? I feel like life is based on perception, and perception comes from experience. I truly believe that. This world has got all kinds of nonsense with politics, and if you're not on that side, you're on that side, and I don't understand that. As parents, we teach our kids to be your own person, right? To not be be a leader, not a follower. Don't be like that person. Don't think like that. You know, think on your own and be your own person. But then when it gets to politics, it's like, well, what do you believe? What's your thought? People ask me all the time, what do you think? Does it really matter? Because whatever I tell you, now you just made your own personal thought and belief on, now we aren't on the same side. I hate it. I hate it. It causes and it makes so much hate in the world, and I don't understand it. I've got friends, a great friend who's a congressman in Kansas, and he put me on his veteran committee, and so he'll ask me questions and things like that, and get my thought on it. And when he steps out, I'm like, dude, that's not cool. I don't understand that. So I wish I could just get all this out into the right words. I'm sorry. It's really hard. I know that I've been judged a lot, and I know that I feel like it's a selfish trait to have, is judging someone. Because if you didn't experience it, you didn't go through it, how can you even imagine what it's like? You know, I've been judged so much that I almost had this thought that I wanted to cut my leg off. And then I had to stop and say, you selfish asshole, because you have no idea what it's like not to have a leg. And so, but I needed people to know that I was hurt and that I had injuries and that you can't see them. And so how do I talk to people when I can't even talk without, like, a full sentence without even messing up or forgetting what I'm talking about? And so, I don't know what it's like to not have a leg or an arm. And I hate that, and I'm sorry for those that have disabilities and that have those things that that they don't have. And then to know that I had a thought about doing that to myself because I needed better attention, I guess. You know, I don't want attention, but so people could like not question me or say, what are you bitching about, you know? And apologize for my language. It's frustrating. And so when I see someone that has an injury or disability, like I go towards them, not away from them. I want to help them however I can because I know the struggle. I know what it's like to be in a wheelchair. And so I guess my final words are, don't judge, ask questions, talk, and just this is like a team. How are you helping the United States by not wanting to work with the other person? You know what I mean? We're all in this together. I feel like that's how we should go. I love being around veterans. I love being around a community like this. I love the support. I love this area. I want to move here. And so I think I'll end with that. It's all right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Zeke. And before we close up Zeke's presentation, there's one more piece we're going to do. As Zeke mentioned, he does all of this art as therapy. You guys can all sit down real quick. But thank you for standing for Zeke. Zeke's a great guy. Really inspiring. His story is moving for so many people. So, speaking of moving and inspiring and doing good for others, we have a little surprise. So I'm going to invite Zeke and my Munich friends to come join us real quick.
Hello, everyone. Today, we recognize an individual who stands out amongst the crowd. This person is always quick to jump to support any community projects, events, and organization that comes their way. Even going as far as stopping by a local cemetery on their day off or driving through a massive nor'easter to the fire department work crew and first responders. This individual is no stranger to the events of Yankee Homecoming, whether it be the Battle of the Bands, Brew Fest, and the Veterans Luncheon, just to name a few.
This individual doesn't just do everything asked of them, they go above and beyond to give back to help this community. Since we've known them, I've never heard the word no come out of their mouth when asked to help. Today, we celebrate the dedication to Newburyport and loyalty to the community. You are a special friend to all our veterans. Thank you, Beacon.
Y'all know
Oh, God.
Oh, yes.
Thinking I'm bringing breakfast and helping out.
You always go above and beyond. I mean, that's true. Whenever someone asks, I just don't know how to say no. Because I was raised that way, and I try to help as much as I can. And I'm having goosebumps right now. I wasn't expecting this. It just comes natural, I guess. But people in this community was always welcome when I first moved here. So it's hard to say no when that's the case. Thank you.
Here we go.